Good evening. Welcome, everyone. Welcome, welcome. Good evening, Grace.
Hi, Noelin.
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
I'm well, thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us today and for agreeing to mentor us in wellness on today's session. Today, we will be speaking on healing from self abandonment, and Grace will take us through it. My name is Noeline. I'm a strategic supply chain leader and a growth mentor. And this evening, I'm showing up as a growth mentor and the host of Safe Space. I am joined by Grace Karaoke. I'm going to read you her bio. Just give me a moment so I can take us off the stage. Sorry about that, Grace. So, Grace Karaoke is a seasoned marriage and family therapist whose passion is to empower individuals, families, organizations, and in turn the society to live authentically and be able to effectively and successfully navigate through life transitions. She has been able to live out her passion both in the USA and in Kenya. Her overseas experience has given her a unique edge to relate to and effectively work with individuals, families, and organizations from diverse populations. Grace holds a Bachelor's of Arts degree in Christian ministry and a Master's of Arts degree in marriage and family therapy. She is a registered member of the National Certified Counselors in the USA, as well as an accredited member of the Kenya Counseling and Psychological Association. While practicing in the USA, she was a duly licensed clinical professional counselor with the states of North Carolina and Maryland. Grace holds a Bachelor of Arts degree in Christian ministry and a Master's of Arts degree in marriage and family therapy. She is a registered member of the National Certified Counselors in the USA, as well as an accredited member of the Kenya Counseling and Psychological Association. While practicing, I've repeated this again. Grace's main passion is empowering marriages and families. She does this through group sessions, family sessions, couple sessions, and individual sessions. She has facilitated groups such as bridal showers, corporate sessions on marriage and parenting, youth sessions, family sessions on areas of growth, crisis intervention, grief, and other family transitions. Welcome, 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 Grace.
Thank you.
Thank you, thank you. So we jump right into it. In the interest of time, I do remember you have another commitment after this. So I
Mm.
will on stage and hand it over to you.
All right, thank you, and hi everyone who has joined us, and I'm glad to be here. This is a really good topic that we all struggle through, we all grow through. So, self abandonment is what I'm going to be talking about. And because I do quite a bit of individual therapy, even when people come in because of relationship issues, we always end up talking about the individual. And so self abandonment is one of the things that we continually are encountering. Myself, I have mapped my own process of self abandonment and walking through to self compassion. So I want to give you an opportunity to interact with some information that I have, and hopefully it will bring you some clarity as well as some insights, and hopefully some wisdom, and maybe even take you to a space where you can start to work on experiencing self compassion instead of the self abandonment. So we can go to the next slide. So we are going to say what is it? What is self abandonment? And self abandonment is a pattern of behavior where an individual chooses to ignore their needs and feelings in the favor of other people. And as you can see from that picture, this person on the left is giving parts of themselves to a person who is whole. And what is happening, the more they give, the less of themselves they lose. And this is a good picture for how self-abandonment happens. And what really happens over time is that that person begins to feel and to say that I feel like I lost myself. And we see that quite a bit with moms, especially, and people who have been socialized to struggle, people who struggle with self-esteem issues, they will experience the losing of themselves. So I thought this image is so good to express what self-abandonment looks like. And then rejecting and suppressing parts of yourself, which include your needs, your wants, boundaries, limits, in order to do something like maintaining a relationship or getting people to like you. So these are definitions of self-abandonment. And I think each one of us, you can identify spaces where you have rejected or suppressed parts of yourself in order to keep the peace, in order to deal with any feelings of abandonment or not being liked, not being good enough, and you have found ways to make sure that you don't have to experience those very distressing moments. Let's go to the next one. Okay, now let's look at what causes self-abandonment. The good news is that it's a behavior we learn. It's a learned behavior that tries to cope with unhealthy or dysfunctional family dynamics. So it starts very early, actually, during your first 10 years of life. The environment that you are growing up in is continually sending you messages on how you should be in order for you to feel safe, in order for you to feel acceptable, or in order for you to feel peace or to be loved. And so we learn how to navigate the environment where we are. It grows when one lives in unpredictable, chaotic, or abusive family. Now, when we talk about unpredictable, we are really talking about spaces where we don't know what to expect. So, for instance, you can have an example of, I remember working with, well, this story is told so many times, where people say the moment we would hear daddy's car, we would not know how he's going to enter the house, or we are feeling so afraid that there are some noises, or the way that he is, the way he walks in, that is going to tell, the way he hoots the car, that is going to tell us whether today is a peaceful day or not. Those who don't have cars, the same thing. The moment one parent comes home, it is so unpredictable because you guys don't know what is going to set them off. The other thing, when we talk about unpredictable home life, we are not even talking just about violence or abuse. We are also talking about neglect, that I don't have a pencil for school tomorrow. My exercise book is filled up. They have asked us to bring something for school, but I don't know whether I'm going to be able to be given that. So young children begin to feel they cannot even predict whether their needs are going to be met. And then from a young age, one learns to hide their true self. And this usually comes in terms of, when I speak, how I am received and how I experience the relationship when I speak. Then it is going to train me on how to keep myself safe. So, or even watching my older siblings, if I see that when they do this, then they are, whatever happens to them, and I don't want that to happen to me. So I learn that I'm going to hide whatever it is that I truly feel, so that I don't have to deal with the punishment, the humiliation, the threats, or even the displeasure I see in my parents' eyes, or in the teacher's eyes, or even whoever else is in authority while you are growing up. Even house girls, the people who I depend on as a child, how they react to me is going to cause me to learn some behaviors that are going to be self-abandoning. Now, so they morph into whatever role that will keep peace and help avoid ridicule, put downs, physical or emotional pain. Now, this part of emotional pain is the part where now we are very much aware, because some people will say, in my house, we were not beaten, we were not ridiculed, we were not put down, but there was neglect. Like now, two parents who are constantly at work, that the children don't see their parents, they are raised by the house girls. That in itself is going to create emotional pain for that child, because the child is wondering, now, because I never see my parents, do they care? Do they love? Because there is no expression and there is no consistent way of this child understanding whether they are loved or not. Because we all have those needs of acceptance and love. We have the need to feel safe. You have a need to know that we are competent, and we also have the need to know that we have control. And control normally just means that I'm allowed to be my true self, and that I am trained that I can make good decisions. I don't have to be afraid. So these are things that emotionally children need to learn. So one learns to suppress their feelings and needs, and that their worth depends on what they accomplish, what they do, and whatever they do is never enough. So you are constantly wondering, when is it enough? Because still, even when you do all those things, you still don't get what you are looking for. So they learn that their needs, interests, goals don't matter, their thoughts don't matter, their feelings don't matter, and that they don't deserve love and compassion. Because how do we know that people love us? Is by the way they look at us, the way they spend time with us, the way they talk with us. That's how we know that we are loved and accepted, that our thoughts are esteemed and our thoughts are held with compassion, and we are not just being told we shouldn't say or we shouldn't feel the way we. So as parents, we would need, now us who are raising our children, we would need to learn how to present or to offer our children the feeling that no matter how they are, we accept them the way they are. However, there is the caring, the compassion to guide them into who we think, into who we believe they need to be, because we are their parents. So we parent them with love and care and firmness. Now, what happens is that we have been parented with children do not need to say anything, they just need to be there, and we make the decisions. How many times would you, if your child asks you, why should I do that? Because I said so. So when you see, that is a very curious question, that a parent who is in a space where they are emotionally intelligent, they will be able to hear that this child is not questioning you, is not challenging you as the authority figure. They are really kind of asking a question that is normal. They are curious. Why do I need to do that? So that you can be able to say, okay, you have asked a good question, and you can have a dialogue. But obviously, most of us, we were not raised that way. So we by default, we tend to raise our children the same way we were raised. Let's go to the next one. All right. So when you're choosing yourself, this is the way it looks. Now, because choosing yourself is what I'm calling self-compassion, or the opposite, is the opposite of self-abandonment. So one of the ways, especially now that we are grown and we are also raising our children, Then we need to understand when we need to encourage them to choose themselves, even though it makes us uncomfortable. And so you listen to your internal compass. So when if I am the adult, I need to listen to what I am feeling. I need to listen to what I'm thinking, and then I don't diminish my light to fit in. So I am, even my children, I need to see when they are trying to diminish their light in order to please me so that I can correct them. But I have to be able to do that for myself, where I'm not diminishing myself in order to fit in. I cherish my own company. Now people will enjoy being alone, but then they judge it. They begin to say, "Oh, I'm lonely. Nobody wants to spend time with me." But really, when you think about it, is that even though I'm alone, I do enjoy and cherish my company. It's just that maybe there is a societal belief that, or maybe I have been raised to think that I am antisocial, that it is bad for me to be by myself. And therefore, every time I want to be by myself, then I judge myself. I tell myself those negative things. When you meet negative feelings with awareness and curiosity, this word curiosity is one that I use a lot. And especially when I have negative feelings, I always encourage people, be curious about the feelings. Don't just sit in them. Allow yourself to question them. Allow yourself to study the feelings and ask yourself, what are they telling me? So that you don't also use your feelings as a destination. Your feelings are actually a roadmap, and allowing yourself to be curious about where they are leading you to is very helpful. Your self love naturally allows your needs to be met. Now, sometimes the phrase self love tends to delude us because we don't even know what love looks like. So I never received love. I never felt lovable. And therefore, now when I say that I am going to self love myself, it becomes very difficult to even conceptualize what that would look like because I have not experienced that. So, what we want to talk about is self acceptance as part of self love. So, you are looking at yourself, you're curious about yourself without judgment, where you allow yourself to say, actually, I don't like it when somebody takes my things without permission. Usually, we might say that, and if you have a sanguine mother, she's going to say you are selfish. No, you need to learn how to share. So you want to allow yourself to start to learn to be curious about yourself so that you can develop a self acceptance that is going to translate into self love. Then your self talk, make sure your self talk is kind. So this is where you are choosing yourself instead of abandoning yourself. So your self talk is kind, intentional, and evolutionally. Look at it this way. When I think about that, we are constantly evolving because we are not like wood. How I was an hour ago is not the same way I am right now because I am constantly learning. I have a brain. The work of my brain is to receive information and to translate that information so that I continue to grow. Unfortunately, the problem that we have with self abandonment is because we keep playing old messages instead of allowing ourselves to say, when this happened to me, this is what I learned, this is how it transformed me, so that we can gain new ways of talking to ourselves. We are not just repeating the things that we had from the past. And then you will, when you are choosing yourself, you ask for space or set a boundary where you need to. Now, I will give you an example. I have always been, because I'm a firstborn, and so I learned to suppress or to delay my needs for the sake of others, because I became a caregiver very early in my life. And my mother tells me when I was in Form 2, because of what was going on in the family, I told mom that I will stop going to school so that I can go work so that we can be able to help the family. And that is a clear sign of a child who is self abandoning so that they can create hope, peace, whatever it is in the home. So that I was taking a responsibility of a parent when I'm just a kid. And so that is me abandoning myself in order to give to the needs of the family. And my mother, bless her heart, she said, absolutely not. You are going to school no matter what. And so you want to, usually when we are, I was saying that I then, because of that, I learned how to make everybody safe. That was my job. And so I move on and I leave and I go to the US, and I'm working now. I have already finished my schooling, and I go to work in a halfway house where we had clients who had mental illness plus addiction, drug addiction, substance addiction. And I remember in group therapy or even in individual therapy, these men and women had a language that to me it was so vulgar. It used to just make my skin crawl. And I would feel so bad whenever they would use those curse words. And you see, in the US, using curse words, sometimes it's almost normal for them, depending on which communities they come from. That's the way they talk. So I realized, I told myself, I can't continue to suffer in silence. So I spoke to my supervisor and I said, really, I don't like it when they do. And he told me, this is their language. I said, but I am feeling very uncomfortable, and this can actually make me leave work. Then she told me, she said, then why don't you tell them? And so I started to set a boundary where I would say, I am so sorry. If you cannot use proper English, I am not going to be able to do sessions with you. And now, when I set those boundaries, I was very surprised that those men and women, they really respected my boundaries. And I remember we would have our sessions, and if somebody goes into a curse word, they would immediately apologize to me. But you see, if I had not chosen to speak my mind, my desire, and my feelings and say, this is a boundary for me, then I would have continually endured, or I would have left a job, not because I didn't want the job, but because I felt very uncomfortable in the job. So it's important for us to do that. And I hope, as I'm giving that story, as we are talking about this, that you are looking at yourself and you are starting to see the spaces where you have self-abandoned, maybe spaces where you are self-abandoning even right now because of fear, because all of this is really rooted in fear. Then you stand up for yourself, family, and communicate your desires clearly. And I'm going to, at some point, I'm going to identify some things for those of you who are overthinkers. We need to talk about that, because that is one of the biggest reasons we self-abandon. Let's go to the next one. And once obviously, if I self-abandon, I'm going to choose somebody else instead of me. So these are signs that you self-abandon. Number one, you don't trust yourself. And sometimes we say, I don't trust people, but really what we are saying, I don't trust myself to be able to handle people who don't agree with me. You see, so when you second guess, when you gaslight yourself about your truth, and you choose to suppress your truth for the sake of another, in a way that you suffer, then you don't trust yourself to be able to handle another person refusing to listen to what is your truth. And it's very important, because then when you do that, you're going to struggle with self-doubt. And so you will always feel like you are stuck. Now, you struggle with perfectionism. So perfectionism is not only for individuals who are like cholerics or melancholics. Perfectionism is for anyone who feels that they are not good enough. So they all always have this impossible narrative of what the mark of perfection is. And nobody, they can't reach it, and nobody can reach it. And so it creates a lot of helplessness. And self-abandonment is going to be right there behind selflessness and powerlessness. And then you hide parts of yourself to be liked. Now, I want to say here that there are times when it is important, not necessarily you are hiding parts of yourself. You have to also be shrewd that you are not opening up yourself for abuse. So you don't want to lie, and you do not want to present yourself for who you are not. What you want to do is to make intentional choices on how you protect yourself, on how you choose yourself, so that you don't find yourself to be creating self-harming behaviors, or you are presenting yourself into spaces where you are being harmed. So it is really a matter of, you don't want to hide parts of yourself because of shame and guilt, but also you need to be very clear that there are people who are not safe for you. But you see, if you don't trust yourself, you cannot be able to read, quote unquote, the behaviors of other people, or you are unable to see people who are not good for you. And so you keep having this hope that somebody is going to change. You suppress emotions to cope. You seek external validation. If somebody doesn't agree with you, then you go into a lot of distress. You feel so much distress. You can't appreciate your successes, where if people tell you, you wonder, are they really just telling me, or do they really mean it? It's important for you to kind of allow, and that is where we were talking about being able to sit with your emotions and be friends with it, with your emotions, without judging yourself, without criticizing yourself, without comparing yourself with other people. Then your self-talk is harsh and judgmental and critical. We all know how we go through something and we call ourselves stupid. We say that how could I do that? We are not we are not we have no compassion for ourselves. You shut down your truth to fit in. You ignore your boundaries to please. You remain silent when your needs go unmet or a personal boundary is crossed. These are things that we need to think about, and we ask ourselves if that is something that we keep doing, so that we start looking at how we can move away from that. Always, I want you to remember that I have given you two ways of evaluating yourself. So this is how it looks when you are self-abandoning, and the opposite of self-abandonment is self-acceptance, and I have shown you how that looks like. Let's go to the next one. All right, so we want to talk about the effects of self-abandonment. So because it's a self-destructive pattern that can contribute to anxiety, depression, low self-esteem and worth, and can result into unfulfilling relationships. So self-abandonment, again, don't forget, is when we choose to please other people in order for us to feel safe. So we suppress ourselves so that we can feel safe. When we have experienced different forms of abandonment as a child, it is common to self-abandon to stay connected, because we all need connection. So we will beg, we will cry, we will refuse our truth so that we continually stay connected. Now, this is a place where we need to, you have had people always asking, how do people continually stay in abusive relationships? And the biggest reason is because of this need to stay connected. When we talk about trauma bonds, where people stay together despite the negative patterns of relating, It is, we are saying that this person, their connectedness is so much more important than their safety, in the space where they are going to feel safe, to feel acceptable. That part, they cannot predict it, and therefore they can't trust it. We tend to feel safe in spaces where we can predict, because now I know when this person is angry, this is the way they act, and I feel okay because I can predict what's going to happen. Now, unfortunately, then we normalize being treated badly, and we also normalize abandoning ourselves, because then it's familiar, it's safe, it's predictable. But that is not healthy, neither is it real safety. And it takes away the needs that you have as a human being, to be loved unconditionally, to be accepted. It takes away your need to feel that you are competent and to know that you are competent. It takes away spaces where you can grow because you feel safe, real safety, and it takes away spaces where you can have control. Now, what is control? Control for me as an emotional need is where I am free to make mistakes and correct. I am free to be human without being made to feel like I am worthless. That I am free to experience even those feelings of shame as a way of moving from defective ways of acting into ways that are healthy and ways that are choosing me and my truth. This is not, we are not talking about selfishness. We are really talking about learning how to accept yourself so that you can be a healthy part of the bigger community. Now, if I reject myself so that I can fit into the bigger community, eventually I am going to create what we call the fear of the unknown, which is anxiety. I will struggle with the fear of the unknown, and therefore I will struggle with self doubt and self sabotage because I'm driven by fear. And then, thirdly, I will struggle with feelings of loss of control. And therefore, I will not be confident, and I will not have opportunities to develop trust, self trust. Now, I will also find myself developing depression in form of bitterness, resentment and bitterness. Even though I'm smiling and helping everybody and being there for everybody, I am actually leaving that place feeling lonely because I am unable to express my need. And therefore, I do all these things that I learned to stay connected with people. However, I have no personal connection with me. And then low self-esteem, then it means that my esteem is dependent on what is happening around me. If I get accolades, I feel high self-esteem. If I get nobody is validating me, I get low self-esteem. And so I am not stable. And then I'm fulfilling relationships because I am not feeling happy. So if I am an introvert, what will happen is that I am keeping quiet, I'm not speaking up, and so I will act in passive aggressive ways where I might threaten once in a while, or I might leave and then come back. I block people. I do all these kinds of things where I am so volatile that I can't have healthy, steady, and stable relationships. If I am an extrovert, I am full of violence and people can't predict whether I'm okay. I project a lot. I am not, again, fulfilled, stable, and peaceful. I'm constantly throwing things at people. And so we need to kind of look at our lives and see how are these things I'm talking about presenting themselves in me, and then also look at now where the root cause might be. Let's go on. All right. So these are practical steps on how you can start the healing of self-abandonment. Remember, the opposite of self-abandonment is choosing yourself. So, number one, always identify how you self-abandon. And so important, who are the people who trigger that? What circumstances trigger my self-abandonment? Allow yourself to really do some sort of research. And this is where we are talking about the emotions. Don't sit with them, let them overwhelm you. Allow them to be like a roadmap, like an alarm clock, where it's telling you, hey, pay attention, so that now you can begin to identify when you abandon and how you do it. What is it? Is it people pleasing? Is it projecting on people? What is it that you normally do when you self-abandon? And then number two, you need to identify your triggers: people, places, and things. Who are the people who trigger you? Which are the places that trigger you to self-abandon? It could be a workspace, it could be a business that you are in, and who are the things that trigger you as well. So the things could even be your own emotions. That when I feel fear, I'm not going to express myself because I don't want to, I'm afraid of something. And there are four fears we basically have: fear of abandonment and rejection, fear of failure, fear of punishment, and also the fear of shame. Number two, learn how to set and hold boundaries that stop others from feeding the self abandonment. I like this one: feeding others from feeding the self abandonment. So you want to also allow yourself to identify, if because I don't like the way I am, the way that every time I'm with my mom, I self abandon. I start to think, what kind of boundaries would I set? And then pay attention to the way you talk to yourself and the way you say, okay, so I will hear, and I have done this myself too. If I say this, then they are going to say this, and then that will happen. No, I can't speak. I can't say anything. So you see, that in itself is that you have gaslighted yourself. You have actually told yourself that it is no use to do that, because you are doing something we call magical thinking. You are predicting how another person is going to think. Now, I usually say then you need to change your goal for expressing. So your goal for expressing is not so that the other person can agree with you and applaud what you're doing. No, the goal is for you to express. The goal is for you to identify the boundary. The goal is for you to successfully say, I do not like this, I am not going to take it anymore, and we need a change. That is your goal. Your goal is not for your partner, the other person to agree with you. Because if that is your goal, then you are not going to get what you want. You are not going to be able to choose. You are not going to choose yourself, because the moment your mind begins to say, if I do that, then they will say, then they will do, then you won't be able to experience what you are looking for. Then practice setting boundaries that stop you from self-abandoning. Now, these are what we call your own self boundaries, your emotional boundaries. Like now, identifying your fears and sitting with that fear and asking yourself, what is it that I'm predicting is going to happen? So that now this fear, we ask, is it perceived fear or is it real fear? Like now, when I talk to couples who are married, and I will ask, so I might have a man say, I usually don't tell her because of the way that she's going to react. And I say, well, how is she going to react? And then they will explain, oh, I don't like the way she will shout, the way she's questioning me. And then I say, I'm afraid, so you are afraid of being punished. And they say, oh, no, 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 I'm not afraid of being punished. And then we start to explore that. And we find out that it comes actually from childhood, where if I spoke, either mom or dad would shout back. And so myself, because I'm flag, because I'm a sanguine, I don't like chaos. I mean, I don't like those kinds of chaos. So I would rather be quiet. Mimi sipendi vita, sipendangi vita. So now you need to understand that now if you are married or you are in a conversation with a choleric, cholerics love vita, not in that way, like a let's fight, but they love a good argument. And so if every time they are going to go into an argument, you see it as a negative thing, as a fight, then what is going to happen? You will always self-abandon so that you can keep the peace. So what you want to do is to study the reason why you self-abandon, so that you can be able to identify how you are going to how you are going to come out of that space and create safe spaces for yourself to be able to self choose rather than self abandon. The other thing that is very important for us to do as we practice self boundaries that help us stop self abandoning is to be able to identify feelings of fear and guilt. These two feelings are the ones which make people self abandon. So I'm not going to say no. I remember myself how I would rationalize the reason why I cannot set a boundary with a family member who is asking for even maybe 200 shillings because they want to buy food. And then I would say to myself, what if I don't give them that 200 shillings and then they die? You see how now my mind would go into extremes. And I remember I started to think to myself, but somebody cannot die because they didn't eat for one night. And the reason why I was having this conversation with myself is because I was realizing that I have created a dependency. I have created a codependency with this particular family member, that I have become their solution for their problem. And it's easier. I found out myself that it's actually easier for me to just fix their problem instead of engaging with them to help them to learn problem solving and decision making. Now, when you start to exercise the boundaries that you put upon yourself so that you don't self-abandon, you realize that people actually have a way of creating solution. It's just that when they called you, you became the solution, and so they didn't have to problem solve anymore. And this is important for us to understand if we struggle with self-abandonment. Now, engaging the inner child can be very, very powerful, so that you can be able to heal or resolve or dissolve your original abandonment trauma. Many of us don't realize that the moment we go into deep distress and we start to self abandon is because there was that template that came, because then whenever we have a negative occurrence and it's very uncomfortable, we can't problem solve. We go immediately into the way that we saw at home things were done. So very extreme ways of dealing with small problems. So every problem was magnified. And so as a now a grown up, anytime that I have any feeling of helplessness, I'm going to run into self abandonment. I'm going to run into magnifying the situation. There is nothing I can do. And I go into helplessness and powerlessness. And sometimes that can now morph into hopelessness. And I'm not able in that moment to be able to look at what could work or what has worked, how I have survived over the years. So the inner child work, there is a simple thing that I usually tell people that they can do. Because whether you are choleric, sanguine, melancholic, or phlegmatic, whenever you are in a space where the distress of the current situation is too heavy on you, and you feel helpless, hopeless, or even powerless, what is going to happen? You are going to go into a child state. You are going to throw a temper tantrum, whether it is openly or whether it is inwardly. Now, when you think about a child who is experiencing abandonment, you know how they act. They become very agitated. They are crying. They are feeling like it's the end of the world. And so, some of us, when we get into this depressive or helplessness and powerlessness space, we are unable to see anything that we can do because we revert into a child state and we feel we have no ability. Then this is now self-trust. We have no ability to be able to get through this very difficult situation we are in. So what do? We throw that temper tantrum because and you see now we don't have mom or dad, we are grown. So what is happening? Our inner trauma, our abandonment trauma is awakened. And then what we are going to do is we are going to go into that self-abandonment space where now either we are going to want to self-destruct, we are going to pacify someone so that we can be okay. And so we develop this attachment and safe attachment or insecure attachment styles that are going to cause us to self-destruct. So, for instance, if I am anxiously attached when it comes to intimate relationships, any relationship that I'm in, then when there is a space of conflict, immediately I become very anxious, which is fear. And then I begin to be preoccupied with how I am going to create safety back. And the only way I'm going to create safety back is I am going to indulge the person who is causing me to feel abandoned so that I can bring them closer to me and then the anxiety can go away. So even when they are the ones who have done me wrong, I will come in case so that we can go back to attachment and we can go back to connection. I'm going to come and apologize. But deep down within me, I'm developing resentment and I'm developing bitterness. But once the peace is back, I go back to life as normal and I forget how bad it was. So as long as there is no abandonment, and then I'm okay. But then over time, I find that I have allowed a lot of things to happen to me that shouldn't have happened, but it's mainly because I really have been self-abandoning for a long time in order for me to keep peace. Now, so it is I don't know if that is the last slide, Noeline.
Yes, it
So
is.
okay, so it is important, it is very important for us to engage in some inner child work, because remember, your self-abandonment tendencies you learned during your formative years, especially your first 15 years of life. You learned how to keep the environment safe by abandoning parts of yourself so that you didn't have to be punished or rejected or abandoned. And so we begin to feel that it's our responsibility to keep the environment safe. Now that even happens at work, where we cannot speak up because we don't want to be punished, we don't want to lose something. And we will create stories in our head of how the other person is going to act if we speak our truth. And some of us have been surprised that when we spoke our truth, it didn't happen the way I thought it would happen. In fact, it was better than I thought. Because sometimes people are going to, like I said, people are constantly evolving. And even our bosses, for instance, you might go the day when he fought with his wife in the morning, and you go and you ask for something and he bites your head off. And then you go on a day when he is happy and he is okay, there is no stress in his life, and he's very agreeable. So because we cannot predict what people are thinking, what their state of mind is, we need to trust ourselves so that we come in and we say, this is what is going on. We are comfortable to speak our truth, but most importantly, we know that whatever happens, we are resilient and we can do it. So we don't want to keep going back to the anxiety of what will happen. If I say that, then it will happen. We need to learn and evolve as we see that we are surviving. We are surviving so that we stop thinking that things can be perfect. They can't. What we want to do is to develop emotional resilience. Now, we do need to know also, as I finish, that one of the reasons why then self-sabotage becomes so automatic is because we have repeated it so much, it has become part of our persona. But because I'm telling you that we have the potential, the difference between us and animals is that we have a brain. We have a logical brain. And as long as you have a logical brain, you get information and it's going to update all these things that we have learned when we are younger. And it's very interesting when I work with individuals, and even for myself, as I look at my life, there are some things that even today, with all the knowledge I have, with all the things I have accomplished in life, even when I was 14 and I decided I am going, I accomplished my goal, which was to eradicate poverty from my family. God made a way for me to do that. Everybody that was willing to go through high school, I helped my mom, and we summation everybody. In fact, because my dad abandoned us, we bought land, we built a house. We have a big tank of water, and we have accomplished a lot. But there are still some areas of my life where I still struggle with the abandonment trauma. And I keep working on it because I am not perfect. And I don't think on this side of the earth I will attain perfection. And so accepting my quote unquote shameful self is part of my growth so that I can assimilate this shame, see where it came from, and allow it to train me, not to empower me, but to train me so that I can update the belief systems that I have been socialized to believe. So if I repeat a belief over and over again, it becomes a habit of thinking. And so what I want to do is now that I want something different, I need to go to the recesses of my unconscious mind, my memory, and I bring out the things that could be informing how I am acting today. Because when I look at some areas of my life, I'm really going. And when I look at some areas of my life, when I am triggered, what we were talking about, your triggers, people, places, and things. When I face some certain people, some certain things, some certain places, I go into self-abandonment. I need to isolate those incidences and ask myself, why? What is going on here? How is this happening? So that I can be able to begin the journey to climb out of that space. All right, that's it for tonight. And I am very grateful. Thank you for staying tuned. And I hope you have picked one or two things that can help you in your continued self awareness, self regulation, and also self actualizing. Back
Thank
to
you
you,
so much,
Noeline.
Grace. Thank you. Thank you so much. I actually don't have many questions. I have just one because you've answered most of them during the course of the mentorship session. So I'll
Yeah.
just share on screen what has been asked. And the question is, how do we deal with a friend who has self-abandoned themselves? Because it can be draining being in their space.
Yes, absolutely. Ooh, unajua huyo friend wa pity party. Let's get popcorn, let's get a fire going, and we sit here and we cry. So you will find people who are like that, and they have become very comfortable with the hell that they are used to. They are very afraid of the heaven that could be. So we want to, in this case, you have to use what we call tough love. So even you yourself, and thank you, Faith, for asking this question. So I would need to be able to speak up to my self-abandoning friend, and I tell her now, I am sorry, because I have tried to help you to show you how we can get out of this space, and you constantly are unable to make those choices. So I am telling you because I feel very drained whenever we do that. So this is now me, the person who is dealing with the self-abandoning individual, setting a boundary with them. Now, if that setting boundary is something that I am afraid of doing, or I'm telling myself, if I do that, what if they kill themselves? What if they do this? What if they do this? I need to ask myself, is this fear that I am playing in my mind about being firm with my friend for their own good, where does that fear come from? So that I can also understand, because if I don't set boundaries with them, then I will also become just part of that enabling. So it's a codependent relationship. So, and especially if it's a friend who they cannot hold space for you, they have that victim, it's me who is the victim. Then what you want to do is to really set boundaries to say, this one, I am here for you only if you are willing to take, I will do, if you are willing to take these steps, I'm going to work with you. But now, if you're not willing to take those steps, I am not going to be part of this pit party. It's really draining me. So being honest, sometimes even with people who are self-abandoning, can really change their brain. They can change their way they are thinking, because when we don't speak up, people think we are comfortable. So we want to be able to let them know, hey, I don't like this, continuing to cry. I remember I had a breakup when I was 29. I had a friend. She was a really good, she still is a good friend of mine. And we would go, and when I started to talk, I would start to talk about the breakup. And this was like a year later, and we would be talking, and she was a mother. So we would go, there used to be the school where we were both students at a school, and so we would go to the prayer room. There was a prayer house, and there were rooms in there. We would go and sit there, and we would talk. And then by the time we are looking at the our watches, it's 10 p.m. Yes, one day she just told me, Aki Grace, I don't think this continuing to talk about your breakup is helping. I think it's making it worse for you. And she set a boundary, and she told me, I think we need to stop talking about it and now begin to think about how we are going to get into a healing space. And I'm grateful. And it's not just her. There was also another friend of mine that when she came to visit me, and I started to now tell the story again. And she told me, Grace, do you think retelling this story is really helping you? And they made me shift, so that now I started to feel that, hey, I'm burdening them. But sometimes we are not expressing our true feelings about our friend who is self-abandoning, and we need to ask ourselves, why not? So that myself, even as a therapist, I will watch and I will hear that a client is constantly wanting to talk about. So I will ask, I will say, so I know when you came to counseling, you said that you wanted to overcome anxiety and these other symptoms that you're dealing with. And it seems to me that probably you need to vent first, and then we will talk about that, and I will clarify the goal for them, because I am experiencing they are not looking for how to, they are actually looking for, can I bear my heart out? And so then I will guide them, and I will say, okay, we can actually do, and once the conversation comes to the table, they understand, they are going like, actually it really makes me feel unburdened when I talk about it, because everybody comes to therapy because they want some tips on how to, but before you get to the tips, sometimes you need to offload. So for friendships, we need to get to the point where we are honest with our friend, because we are not helping them, but we can be honest and we see where that honesty takes us. Now, will they probably atajifungia for 2 or 3 days? Yes. Allow them to sit with the feelings. Don't go and rescue them. Just allow them to sit with the feelings. You might want to kind of, there was one time I had a certain person that when I set the boundary, they started to first of all they blocked me, and then I decided, you know what, I'm just going to wait a couple of days. And so the following day nione kama bado wako hai, because she had actually told me she was going to end her life because there is no need. So I noticed that that she deleted anything that we had talked about. So the following day, I went to her, WhatsApp status, and I saw, oh, she's still breathing, and so I realized that that I needed to give her time so that she can be able to sit with her emotion and maybe gain some clarity. So I hope that answers the question.
I think it does, Grace. I think it really, really does. And thank you so
Yes.
much for sharing from lived
Yeah.
experiences. It does make it easier to correlate
Yes.
what is being said, the theory to the practical, and even its application in our
Yes.
own lives. Thank you, Grace. Thank you so, so much. I'm
Mm-hmm.
also very conscious of the fact that you have another engagement
Yes.
this evening. But
Mm-hmm.
before you leave, I just want to remind the audience that Grace Karaoke is reachable on the link that I have shared. You can log on and book an one-on-one appointment with her. I usually recommend 2 hours, not one. She'll tell you by the time you're done answering the question, how are you? 30 minutes have already gone. And your session has not even started yet. So
Yes.
please do
Yes.
reach out to her. Let's purpose to take care of ourselves. And I think one of the best ways to show self compassion is by going to therapy. And Grace is here. So please do reach out to her. The link is available. You can also follow her on LinkedIn, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, and be able to follow her content. Thank you, everyone who has been able to join us today and who will be catching the recording later on. Have a fantastic balance of day and a blessed balance of week. I will see you next week. Bye, everyone.
Bye.